everyone. I'm so glad you're here with us tonight. It's going to be a very, very special night. So welcome, mothers and others. Tonight, we get to meet Rochelle Garza, who is running for Texas Attorney General. So we're so excited to introduce you all to Rochelle. We have met her before earlier this year, and we did ask her a bunch of really hard questions, but a lot of things have changed since the primary season. So now we get to ask some more specific questions, which will be really great. So welcome, Rochelle. We're so glad you're here. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're running to be the Texas's next Attorney General?
Well, thank you for having me on. I am also a mother against Greg Abbott in my heart of hearts. My name is Rochelle Garza. I'm the Democratic nominee for Texas Attorney General. I'm a civil rights attorney. I'm a mother to a 6-month-old daughter, and I'm from the Rio Grande Valley. I'm running against criminally indicted Ken Paxton to not only bring back integrity and transparency to the office of Attorney General, but to fight for our families and for our children. And that is something that is very near and dear to my heart. Everything that I have done in my legal career has always gone back to my roots and my family. I'm from the Valley. I grew up with a sibling with disabilities. My brother Robbie experienced a brain injury during childbirth, and I saw my parents be big advocates for him and ensure that he was treated with dignity and with respect. That's why I became a lawyer. That's why I've taken on the fights I've taken on. And that's why I've practiced almost every issue area. I've practiced immigration, family, criminal defense, constitutional law, and I've had some really important wins in my legal career. But I'm taking on Ken Paxton so that we can restore integrity to the office and have somebody in office who actually cares about family instead of staying out of prison.
Well, that's exactly what we want to hear, because it's about time that we have people in office across Texas that care about families, because we're not actually at the receiving end of that currently here in Texas. And it's very concerning. So what do you think the responsibilities of the Attorney General's office in Texas? What do they do, and why is it important for Texans to vote for an Attorney General that represents their interests?
So the Attorney General is the top legal officer of the state of Texas. And in my view, the Attorney General is supposed to be the people's lawyer, supposed to essentially be the public defender of the will of the people, of civil rights, and really looking out for everyday Texans. You know, I mentioned my opponent, Ken Paxton. He does not focus his work on protecting families. I want to make sure that we have a fully funded civil rights division to look out for the safety, the privacy, and the dignity of every single Texan, that we ensure we're protecting voting rights, that we are fighting to restore reproductive rights in the state of Texas, that we have accountability for bad actors and price gougers, like what we saw happen with the power grid failure. There's so much that this office can do to have a meaningful impact on people's lives, also including child support collection. There's so much that we can do, and I am looking forward to getting that done.
Thank you. So why are you the better choice for Attorney General for those that have in the past maybe have voted for Republicans, but now feel that Ken Paxton is just not doing his job?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fifth generation Tejana. I'm a mother. I am a working person. I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I understand what Texans are going through and the concerns that the Texans have. Now, I'm from, being from the Rio Grande Valley, we have very specific concerns that most rural communities can relate to. The lack of investment, the lack of infrastructure, the failing hospitals, and not having enough medical specialists. And having these experiences, understanding what people are going through, is going to inform how I run the Office of Attorney General. because it is an independent office that doesn't necessarily answer to anyone other than the people of Texas, I want to steer this office in the direction of really looking out for everyday Texans and using the power in that office to uplift Texas families.
Thank you. So in the past, Ken Paxton has been charged for felony securities fraud, and this was in July 2015. What is the holdup with his case? Is the delay in his trial questionable? Because it sort of seems like an inside job where it could be questionable.
Ken Paxton, unfortunately, has never seen a crime he doesn't want to commit. And it's because he truly doesn't believe the law applies to him. They're being under criminal indictment for 7 years without trial for securities fraud. And let me be specific what that means. For tricking his own clients into bad investments that benefited him. That's what he is charged with. And most cases like his are resolved within 1 year. 83% of cases like his are resolved within 1 year. So he has been able to avoid going to trial, because of his position. He is also under FBI investigation for bribery and corruption. So there are a lot of nefarious acts on his part that have resulted in him being able to, skirt the law and literally run away from it, because he did run away from a subpoena 2 weeks ago. That's why we need to hold him accountable. Holding him accountable as the current sitting attorney general is really, really, really difficult. It's nearly impossible to force him to do his job. So we, the voters of Texas, need to vote him out in November so that we can restore integrity and so that it is no longer an embarrassment to have someone like him in office.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So he did run away from a subpoena a couple weeks ago, and that was just hilarious and sad and all of those things all at once. Could you explain what the subpoena was for and what has happened since then? Has he actually finally been served with that subpoena?
There are abortion funds that were suing the state of Texas to have clarification about whether or not they would be criminally prosecuted for trying to assist people with getting an abortion out of state. Okay, that's what they were trying to get clarification on from the court. It's very normal for the Attorney General's office to be served in cases like that, because he is the one who is saying he's going to prosecute people.
So let's talk about people with disabilities and people who have children with disabilities, because that's also really important to my heart. I have a lot of friends with children with all different varieties of disabilities. And also I have a special needs son who is 17 years old, and trying to find fairness in their care and in just overall their well-being is really hard to do in the state of Texas. So you mentioned your brother, Robbie. He had suffered from a brain injury during childbirth that forced your parents to fight for healthcare. Talk to us a little bit about your brother and the healthcare issues that your parents had to deal with. And what would you do as Attorney General to help those Texans that need access to healthcare, especially those with disabilities?
I watched my parents fight very, very hard to get my brother basic health care, to be refused medical service for my brother Robbie because doctors didn't feel like he should be treated because of his disabilities. And I know that's not all doctors. So my mom was very fierce about making sure that she found physicians that would treat him with dignity and give him the medical treatment that he needed. But I also remember, and this is before Obamacare, before we had the ACA, I also remember just how difficult it was just to get him insured and to fight with insurance companies over coverage of things like a wheelchair lift. Ken Paxton, my opponent, did litigate to try to overturn the ACA, to overturn Obamacare, to take away coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. I'm very grateful that he failed in that endeavor, but that doesn't mean he won't try again. So as Attorney General, I can work with other attorneys general across the country so that we can improve the healthcare. We can improve access to healthcare through litigation or through advocacy. In the state of Texas, we haven't expanded Medicaid, and that's just one piece of the puzzle to make sure that people have access to healthcare, especially people with disabilities, because we know that there are some certain thresholds financially that people with disabilities have to meet, and it doesn't always work for certain families, and they still need the help. So I want to make sure that we're using this office to address companies that are failing to meet their standards, insurance companies that deny coverage, that we're acting as a watchdog for people. Because we all deserve to be treated with dignity. We all deserve to have a fair shot, and it should not exclude people with disabilities.
Yes, I have a friend tonight. Her name is Maggie. So shout out to Maggie. She posted earlier today. She has a son with some disabilities. He has Down syndrome, and he has been waiting for Medicaid for 15 years now to be eligible for Medicaid. And I have a special needs son, and I actually didn't even know that he was eligible for Medicaid until just recently. I also try to file for Social Security benefits for him because he's now 17. He's able to get some of those benefits, and it has been almost nearly impossible for us to go through the paperwork and the dealings and prove everything. It makes me want to pull out my hair. That's probably going to be some of the things that I'm going to be working on when this election is over. I'm going to go back and take care of some of the things for my son. So, I mean, where can an attorney general really, really help out within those instances? Because we're seeing this over and over again. Even the wait list for young adults or adults with special needs to get into homes or get into some placement that is safe for them. Those lists are, more than 10 years long. So what can we do?
I mentioned that I want to have a fully funded civil rights division, and I do envision having a disability rights unit so that we're addressing things like that. And transportation issues, because we know transportation is a big problem. Access to transportation for people with disabilities is a big challenge. The Office of Attorney General, so just to contextualize this, we can investigate, we can litigate. So using those powers to make sure that we have accountability and that we have transparency are going to be how I envision addressing these issues. I also want to work in partnership because I understand that the people that know the issue most intimately are the ones that also can help provide the solutions. So working with a disability rights council to address specific issues, like the one that you mentioned, Nancy, in terms of that waiting list, that is something that I could see this office doing through the Disability Rights Net. I know I'm a civil rights lawyer, but I'm also a community lawyer, and I know the power of working with community to address issues. And if it takes litigation, it takes litigation. But I really want this office to be open to the public and fully transparent.
So today I'm wearing, just for you, I'm wearing it says the 14th t-shirt because it lists all of the things that are on the line right now in politics, which is the 14th Amendment. So let's talk about the 14th Amendment. A lot of these rulings are protected right now by the federal government, and we're seeing some of these cases being overturned by the Supreme Court of the United States. And then they're leaving these decisions to the state government. And we're also seeing some pretty serious implications from that. So could you talk to us about the 14th Amendment and how important it is to you, and why is it important that we continue preserving some of these cases and their rulings in the federal government level versus the state level?
So the right to privacy is something that that all of us have heard about, but don't really quite understand how it impacts our lives. That's where abortion care fell under. Roe versus Wade was decided under that right. And now that it has been taken off the table, that we have a Supreme Court that did not respect precedent and removed this particular right to privacy. So marriage equality is also based on option for women in particular, because believe it or not, we used to have to ask permission from our husbands to get contraception. Interracial marriage is also part of that. Loving v. Virginia is the case. Ken Paxton in particular has said, as soon as Roe fell, he not only celebrated and named it a national holiday in his office, but he has said explicitly that he will challenge marriage equality, that he will challenge bringing back anti-sodomy laws, and he can do it because we're in Texas. So Texas is absolutely critical for this far right extremism, because he can pick whatever court he wants in the state of Texas, get the decision that he wants, take it to the Fifth Circuit, which is the most conservative circuit court in the country, and then take that decision right up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has given him enough votes to get whatever he wants done. So this election is absolutely critical for all the rights that we care about. It is the queen on the chessboard. We pick this one off. This is an absolute game changer, not only for Texas, but for the entire country, because we can make a real immediate impact in protecting people's rights, because that is what I'm going to do with this office. I'm going to protect people. I'm not going to try to take away rights.
Yeah. So speaking of protecting people, let's go right ahead and just talk about Roe versus Wade, and let's talk about SB 8 and the Dobbs decision. So a lot really is on play for women right now across Texas. All women, including the Republican women. Let's not forget about them, because they need to be reminded that they are forfeiting their rights too. And they never know what they're going to lose until it happens. So what is your position on SB 8? What can we do right now in the interim? What can we do if you're elected into office? What would be some of the first protections that you would try to get passed if you win the elected office?
So SB 8, just to reiterate what it is, it's the 6-week abortion ban that went into effect on September 1st of last year. It also included a bounty hunter scheme, which is something that is completely novel, where you can have any individual in any location in the country suing to collect a $10,000 bounty if they believe anyone aided or abetted an abortion. It is, in my view, that is unconstitutional, because it is specifically designed to evade the court's review. So you cannot have a law that cannot be checked by some other, our country is founded on checks and balances, and there is no checks and balance on this particular law. So that's why it's so particularly dangerous. Now, right now, abortion is completely illegal in the state of Texas. There are no exceptions for rape or incest, thanks to the trigger law that was put into effect. And doctors cannot provide life-saving care in Texas because of Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton sued the federal government to stop doctors providing life-saving care. So doctors will not provide you care even if you're miscarrying. And if you're miscarrying, they're going to wait until you become septic before they do anything for you. And I've had conversations with physicians that have told me some truly horrific stories about patients that were miscarrying and were, because there was still a heartbeat, they were forced to remain in the hospital until the fetus died before they could even intervene. Not only the trauma that is inflicting on individuals, the financial burden of forcing them to stay in the hospital for multiple days, and then the continued trauma of having to pay that bill off. So we're in a really dire situation in Texas. I don't want to mince words about where we are. And this is going to have impacts beyond our health, right? Abortion is healthcare. It is about our lives, but it's also an economic decision. We're going to see doctors leaving the state of Texas because they cannot provide the standard of care that they are held to. They also do not want to go to prison because the trigger law will send them to prison for life in prison if they help anyone have an abortion that doesn't meet the standard that we've got set, but there really is no standard. So the situation is incredibly dire, and Ken Paxton is really at the forefront of this stuff. We win this election, we can make an immediate impact because I would be an independent constitutional position. I would be able to protect Texans from this extreme abortion ban immediately. I could partner with district attorneys across the state of Texas to make sure that we are restoring access to abortion care through state courts, that that we make sure that doctors aren't afraid to provide care. So it would be a game changer in terms of stopping some of this stuff from happening. And there is the authority to issue legal opinions from the AG's office. So if the legislature, and I think we'll end up with a Republican majority in the state legislature, once they start passing these laws, which we've heard they're thinking about doing, preventing people from leaving the state to access abortion care, I could issue a legal opinion saying that that's unconstitutional, and it wouldn't go into effect through the state agencies. And I can battle it out with the legislature. And I could do that because I'd be an independent officer, executive officer. So I can't stress how important this race is to protecting access to reproductive health care. It's still going to take a lot of work into the future for us to restore care. I don't want to say that it's all going to get better immediately, but this would be so meaningful for so many people.
Absolutely. Because it actually, like you said, it goes beyond the state of Texas. It's going to influence other states as well. And we're seeing the influence of other states and the impact on elections from Kansas to Alaska. And then now it's our turn. So hopefully the women will all get out and vote, right? So with our next question, it's sort of related, has a lot to do with a very popular case that you worked on. So Garza versus Hargan is a case that intersects two important issues in Texas: the right to reproductive rights of all Texans and immigrant rights. Republicans are continuously talking about the dangers of immigrants coming to America through Texas and use these fear tactics to dehumanize people that are seeking asylum, something that is entirely legal in the United States. What is the reasoning behind your decision to represent Jane, the 17-year-old girl in Garza versus Hargan? And how was Jane treated before you stepped in to represent her?
I'm a border native. So I mentioned earlier, I'm a fifth generation Tejana from the border. I started off my legal career as an immigration attorney, specifically working with children, young people that were fleeing violence from Central America. I understand the complexities of immigration law. I understand the complexities of the border and how important it is to stop human trafficking and drug trafficking and gun trafficking. I understand that because I've seen it with my own eyes. And we can do that. And we can also treat people with dignity. I mean, the asylum is something that people can seek in this country, and we should respect that. The federal government needs to do their job in making sure we have an orderly asylum system, and that these communities along the border, which are really bearing the brunt of this, have the resources they need. So I just wanted to be very clear on that part. As Attorney General, I will hold the federal government accountable to do their job because they do need to do it. But that being said, I I'm very proud of my work on the Jane Doe case because it did protect two very important things. It protected immigrants and recognized that they have constitutional rights, specifically to abortion care. And it also protected reproductive rights. And it protects them today for the immigrant population that finds themselves in immigration detention. Jane was a Central American immigrant who fled violence in her home country. She was looking to the United States as the shining light on the hill, and wanted the protection of our country, and found herself in an immigration detention center and was told that she was pregnant and decided she didn't want to become a parent. They tried to force her to remain pregnant. She was taken to a crisis pregnancy center and forced to undergo unnecessary sonograms. She was followed one-on-one in the facility. She was, her parents were told that she was pregnant. Her parents in her home country were told that she was pregnant. There were a lot of things that were done to this young woman that were abuse. And, we stood up for her. We stood up for this young woman. We took on the Trump administration, and we won. We won for her. We took on Brett Kavanaugh, who it was the only abortion case that he heard as an appellate judge, and we beat him back. Ken Paxton tried to involve himself because he loves meddling in things that are none of his business, and we beat him back as well. So I'm very proud of the work that we did on that case to protect this young woman, but also the fact that all the teens in immigration detention are given the Garza notice. And it's called Garza notice or Garza policy because they're told that they have a right to access abortion care. And if they exercise that right, they are moved to a different state in order to enact their abortion decision. And that is in effect today. So it's important precedent. It's important that it exists because we can build on it and we can work towards restoring access, not just in Texas, but across the country.
Okay, so that's interesting. I had no idea. So if somebody would say that they need some protection, so underneath the Garza notice, they are able to transfer to another state?
It's for teens in immigration detention only, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But my point remains the same, that it gives us a roadmap of right. how we can work towards restoring access. And this is going to be hard, right, to restore access to abortion care. But having gone through this experience, I know what it takes. I know how you can get it done. It's very possible. We just need to have a really good legal team and lots of strategery, and we can get it done.
Yes. So we've been talking, well, anyways, right now, basically one of the few issues, because I always call Abbott like 2-issue Abbott, because he only has like 2 issues he can even talk about. But one of the issues that we're really getting beat up about, because it's basically his favorite issue, is the border and the border crisis. And he's created this big deal, and he spent billions and billions of Texas dollars on the border. So I was born in El Paso. That's a border town. You're from Brownsville, also a border town. The border that Greg Abbott talks about is not the border I remember, and it's not the border that my parents are living through. So it's really kind of interesting, his descriptions of the border and the people that are crossing over the border. So can you tell us what some of your policies and experiences have been with the border, and what are some solutions that we are not currently even talking about that we should be talking about when it comes to the U.S. border along Texas?
Feels like every election cycle, some crisis at the border seems to be happening, and they're all coming over, and it's a stunt. It is a distraction from the failures of our leadership. Truly, spending. So there's Operation Lone Star, which is sending people to the border, guardsmen to the border, and we've been seeing these folks committing suicide. It is horrible, because people are being separated from their families for long periods of time. They're not being given resources or support, and they are committing suicide as a result. I believe the 9th person to commit suicide was just very recently. There's the fact that, we're seeing immigrants bust out of state to the tune of $1,700 per person. That is a lot of money that is being spent on a political stunt instead of being invested into border communities or expanding Medicaid. I mean, this is what we can do. We can actually invest in Texas. We can invest in expanding Medicaid. We can invest in our public schools instead of what we're seeing happen right now. They're just stunts. As somebody who is from the border and very proudly from the border, I love my community. I love the fact that I grew up in a bilingual, a bicultural, binational area. I mean, we're very welcoming and loving people. And so I've seen my neighbors, the woman who lives across the street from me, who is a retired teacher, stand up and help these families that are coming across the border that just are looking to seek asylum and give them some hope and some charity. So the border is not what the right is making it out to be, and we need investment. The border communities need investment. And I'll give you one other example. So I did a tour of South Texas, and I remember very vividly, we met a gentleman who was from Eagle Pass, and he was there representing colonias. He represented a number of colonias. And if folks don't know what a colonia is, it's an unincorporated city that typically doesn't have access to running water or sewage. And this gentleman was almost in tears because he has been waiting for money to be invested in these colonias since Rick Perry was governor. And I had this conversation with him and let him know, look, the Attorney General's office has a colonias program. And it has completely been left by the wayside because the colonias program under the AG's office can be used to ensure that people are held accountable for these kinds of communities being popped up and not being provided access to running water or sewage. This is Texas. We have a ton of resources, and yet we have people that live in communities that don't have running water or access to sewage. So that's what we need to be looking towards, is serving the people of Texas, making sure that our communities are safe, making sure that they're connected. And instead of these political stunts that we're seeing our leadership engage in because they just want to win elections.
The area where you live in Texas, like Hidalgo and Cameron County, they were almost out of water this summer because the heat was so bad. I mean, we definitely have a climate change problem in Texas. I mean, all over the world, but in Texas, it was particularly hot this summer. We broke all kinds of records. We saw also in the debate where Greg Abbott and Beto, they were debating, and he said, oh, the grid didn't go down. But this is coming from the man that wanted all of our thermostats at 80 degrees. So he's totally full of it. But, yeah, it was just really pressed. So what could you do as Attorney General, and what would your policies be on, like, what could you do about the grid, maybe investigating the grid failures? Because right now with Republicans in office, and they basically own they run most of the offices from the bottom all the way up. So there's no checks and balances to Republicans right now, which is a major problem that we're seeing with government. So what can we do about the grid as far as investigating the grid? What can we do? And then the next thing is that what should we be thinking about and doing about climate change and the impacts on Texas with climate change?
Yeah. With regards to the power grid failure, just to be clear about what happened, because of Winter Storm Uri, we are now all paying for that failure. So the power companies, they had these losses as a result of the winter storm, and we are paying that off with interest. So that's why we're seeing these rising costs in our energy bills. And I have not been to a single city in this state where I have not heard someone talk about this. We're seeing people with energy bills of $500 or more. I know that I'm experiencing that. I haven't even been home for 2 months, and my energy bill was almost $400. So, this is a big, big, big problem, and it's going to continue to get worse, especially for people that are living on a budget. I mean, how are you going to pay something that is almost as much as a car note, if not more? So the Attorney General's office is supposed to be the people's lawyer. The consumer protection portion of the job should be handling this. My vision for this office is to make sure that we have accountability for the power grid failure. That means investigating these power companies for the price gouging that occurred at the time, and the fact that we are currently paying with interest their losses, because I do believe we can claw back some of that money so that we're not paying it as consumers. So that is the first thing that I can think of in terms of having accountability and some transparency with what happened with the power grid failure, and really trying to protect people's pocketbooks. Consumer protection is one of those things that kind of gets left by the wayside and people don't really know what it means. But, the Attorney General can do so much to make sure that people aren't price gouged on their electric bills, but also when a crisis like that happens, that, the hotels don't increase their rates, so that when you're just trying to stay warm or you're just trying to stay cool, that you are not paying a ridiculous amount of money. And also in terms of forward looking, because climate change is an existential crisis, we are experiencing that across the state and across the nation. Holding polluters accountable, holding bad actors accountable. I know, industry is important in Texas. The oil and gas industry is important, but there are standards that we should be meeting, and we have not been meeting those standards in terms of reducing our carbon footprint and pollution into the community. And we know who bears the brunt of this. It's more Black and brown communities. So making sure that we have accountability on that front is something that I would focus on as Attorney General through the Consumer Protection Bureau, and ensuring that we can have a clean environment.
Thank you. So now let's talk about gun safety and the passing of gun safety laws across Texas. So we after Uvalde, this is a pretty serious issue. I think it's a very serious issue for Latino families, because we all want to protect our kids. So this weekend, I talked to somebody who said that his employees pulled their kids out of public school because they were afraid that something was going to happen in the public school. So now their employees take their kids with them to work and they homeschool while they're at work. So I thought that was kind of interesting perspective, and it really bothered me so much. So I think that we need to talk about the fact that, like, I'm a Latina, you're a Latina too, and families are really important to Latinos. I mean, they just are. Kids and families, everything to us. We see the far right talking about Latinos like we are all just, pro-life, and that we're not necessarily pro-choice. And then we see them not protecting our children from gun safety, which it just boggles the mind. And we see them not remembering our children's names when they die in a massacre. They do not show up to the funerals, which is really also very bothersome. So what can we do right now about gun safety, and what message should we be talking about to the Latinos right now so they would vote for Democrats? Maybe people who will actually show up to their children's funerals, people who remember their children's name, people who will go and fight for them and their families. It's super important that we find ways to reach the Latinos on this subject.
Yeah. So the day of the Uvalde school massacre. It was the primary runoff in Texas, and it was the day that I won my primary, becoming the first Latina to be nominated. And it was also the same day that my daughter turned 2 months old. And I just remember standing with my supporters and feeling just such pain, excitement about having the opportunity to change Texas, but also just heartbroken because I got to hold my little girl when I gave my speech. I got to hold her at night, and there were people that they lost their children and they couldn't do that. And I drove to Uvalde the next day, and it was very hard because, it's a South Texas community, just like the community that I'm from. It hurt as someone from South Texas. It hurt as a Latina. It hurt as a mother. It hurt as a Texan and as a person to see what happened in Uvalde and to see the complete inaction and the utter disregard that leadership has had on this issue. Ken Paxton's first reaction was to say that we should arm teachers, and telling the victims of the families of the victims that life is short. It's horrible to see that that's not leadership, right? The fact that he's got a victims compensation program to help these families, to help families across the state that go through horrific experiences like this, and that he's failed to really help them. It's an utter failure of leadership. We can absolutely do better than Ken Paxton. We can absolutely do better than the leadership that we've got right now. And the failures of the governor for not calling a special session is also very, very much at the top of mind for me and for a lot of people, because we could have gotten these common sense gun laws put on the books. Raising the age back up to 21 to purchase a firearm, closing that gun show loophole so that we can prevent bad actors from getting these kinds of weapons to harm people, safe storage laws to make sure that the guns are properly stored. I grew up hunting with my dad. It was one of the best experiences of my life. And it was just a wonderful bonding experience that I had with him. But I always understood how dangerous a weapon a gun is, and that we needed to, as much as it is a right, that we need to respect that we need to treat it as a dangerous weapon. So we can do all of those things. We need to put more pressure on the legislature to do something, to pass legislation that is going to be protective of people. But we need to start voting like our lives depend on it. And because they do.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we saw in this past couple of years, especially with COVID, we saw Ken Paxton sue cities and towns across Texas, which is insane to me, to have a Texas Attorney General actively seeking to hurt other Texans, especially their city municipalities, because Republicans are supposed to be about small government, yet they haven't really been in this administration. So can we talk a little bit about that, of the overstepping of government underneath Ken Paxton, where he has gone after some local governments?
Yeah, this is an issue of local control. And I truly believe that local municipalities, counties, they know their constituencies the best, especially when we're talking about public health. What happened during the pandemic, during COVID-19, and seeing the reaction that we had out of Ken Paxton's office it was horrific. He was sending letters to cities like mine, telling us to increase our restaurant capacity, otherwise he'd sue us. And this was at the height of our friends and our families dying. Cameron County had accounted for a very high percentage of the death rate as compared to the kind of population we have. because we have these pre-existing health conditions that make us more vulnerable, and the lack of resources that we had. So seeing that happen was incredibly concerning. It's not something that I would do. I believe that local counties and cities know how to address public health issues. So, another example is Brownsville had banned plastic bags at one point because of the plastic issue in the ocean. I think that, and of course Ken Paxton went after us. So this is the power of the Office of Attorney General. The Office of Attorney General could be a partner to local counties and communities, or it could be their biggest enemy. And I want to make sure that we are giving local communities the ability to protect their people.
Thank you. So we're going to start wrapping up. I have saved sort of one of our favorite questions for last, and that is education. So what is the role of Attorney General when it comes to preserving public education here in Texas?
I believe in public education. I'm the daughter of two wonderful people that met as public educators, public high school teachers. And I have a lot of public high school teachers in my family. So I believe fervently in supporting our public schools. As Attorney General, this would fall under the consumer protection arm. I want to make sure that we have accountability for charter schools, because we know that this is taxpayer money that is going to support them, but they don't have to adhere to all of the standards that our public educators have to adhere to. So accountability on that front, making sure that that our dollars are not being misused, that children with disabilities in particular are given proper education through, if they're in a charter school, and making sure that we support public education. I think that, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but public education started off as a city initiative many, many years ago. And that's the power of local communities. One small community decided, hey, we want to educate all our kids. And then it became a nationwide thing to have public schools. So I want to be someone who supports that, supports public education, and also supports communities to address the things that they need to address.
So you're probably tired of hearing this question, but it's something that's really on my mind, especially in the last 24 hours since we found out that the DCCC is not coming in to support Michelle Vallejo with her race for Congress. So the thing that's on everybody's mind right now is, what can we do to save the RGV right now? Because it seems like everything is on the table. We're so desperate to get out the vote. We're so desperate to reach the RVG, RGV, and just try to do anything there. So what can we do about the Rio Grande Valley right now?
Yeah. Well, I will say, as the only RGV Latina on the statewide ticket, I think that change is possible in this state. And it's about investment. It's about representation, and it is about investment. What we're seeing happen in South Texas is because Democrats have not invested as much as they need to. And, Republicans are seeing an opportunity. Have there been some gains? Yes. But Latinos they know that Democrats have the solutions. We need to communicate, and we need to put money into these communities. It was important for me to step up and to run for the statewide office. And I got through 2 elections. I got through a rough primary. I had 43% of the vote out of a five-way primary, had my first baby, and then won the runoff by more than 25 points. Latinos can win in Texas. They can win elections in Texas. 40% of the state is Latino. And we need to have representation that reflects our experiences in our communities.
So at the Texas Democratic Convention, I went to the Ladybird Breakfast in which you were the honoree, which was really great. You did this really amazing thing at that breakfast. And I don't know how many people that are watching us right now were at that breakfast, but you did this really amazing thing and it left an impact on me. And the thing that you did is at the end of your speech, you brought up your team members and you lifted other women on the ticket. So just like Wendy Davis, I felt was lifting you on the ticket, you recognized the rest of the females that were on this Texas state slate. And I'm talking about Susan Hayes and Janet Dudding, and you brought them up on the stage with you. And Michelle, yes, and Michelle, and and you guys were all together, and you brought them on the stage with you, and it was honestly a beautiful moment. And then you even went beyond that, in which I'm just saying kudos to you, because what you did is not, you didn't stop there. You kept on going. You asked any woman who was running for office to stand up. And I just want you to know that at that moment, at that table, I was sitting on a table with a bunch of people who were running for office, and they felt seen. And I thought that was a class act, Rochelle. You did that. You did that. You are beautiful and you're a class act. And it was amazing. And it was so inspirational. And I took what you did. And when I went and I did a speech recently in Waco with the Texas Democratic Women's Group there in Waco. And I copied you sort of a little bit, and I got everybody to stand up.
That's okay.
It's so awesome. I mean, right? Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So I did that because I thought it was really important. What you did is how you influenced me, and how I hopefully somebody who was in that room will go and influence the next people. It's just really important to be seen. And I want to talk about what your role was in that, but also what your role is right now to other Latinas who are thinking of running for office, and other Latinas who are young, and they might be little, and they might be like your daughter, who is, 6-8 months old, all the way up to my daughter's age and beyond, which is my daughter's 16. What can we do right now, just us moms talking and about our daughters and Latinas, and influencing our Latina daughters to strive to run for office and to not give up on Texas? What is your advice to the next generation of Latinas?
Someone asked me recently, what would my advice be to my daughter? And I said, don't ever let anyone underestimate you and the power of your voice and what you can do to change this world. And I deeply believe that, because this really, I know I'm running against Ken Paxton. I know that I have been doing this for a while, and I did it with pregnant and everything that I've done. And I know at the end of the day, this isn't about me. This is about my daughter. This is about our children's future and what kind of world we want to leave to them. So I hope that I know we're going to win this election. And my hope is that there are young people across the state, young women, young Latinas, that believe in themselves, that feel seen, that they know they can make a difference in this world, and that we can make things better, where we're all seen, regardless of who we are, where we live. That's what I want to see happen in the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to see that happen in the future too. And what can we do to help you right now with your campaign? Where do you need the most help? Where can people find you? Tell us all the things.
And we're working very hard. We have been traveling. I have not been home in 2 months. So I am very excited to make my way back to Brownsville. Because Texas is huge, and we have been going absolutely everywhere and working very, very hard. So follow me on social media, Rochelle M. Garza. You can share my posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. and donate to my campaign. We are working towards being on TV. You will see something, I think, soon. So we need to make sure we are flooding the airwaves about who I am and just how bad Ken Paxton is, because not everybody knows. And volunteer. You can go to my website, Rochelle Garza for Texas, and sign up, and we'll utilize you for get out the vote efforts. And if we can't necessarily have you help us, Mothers Against Greg Abbott can use your efforts to make sure that we're getting the vote out. But all of those things are very helpful to us. And I look forward to seeing you in November when we win.
Absolutely. We're going to have a big party and lots of margaritas, for sure. All of us. Yes. Just to add a little bit to this conversation is that you did an ad with Mike Collier that was fantastic. Your commercial that you did with you and Mike Collier was just perfect. It was really great. And I was so incredibly proud that you all teamed up together to do that. It made me just so happy when I saw that ad. And I also want to say, just one more thing along with all of that is that is you have the state slate. You guys are amazing. You guys all get along. Your teams all get along, and you guys have really been amazing on the road with teamwork and working together. So I just want to recognize that. Is there any kind of shout out at this point of that campaign that you want to do to anyone on your team?
Well, I appreciate my team. My team has been fantastic and very supportive, especially in supporting a new mother. And we always say that the baby is really actually she's the candidate. She's the one who runs the show. She's the queen. But I have a wonderful staff. I have wonderful people that have supported me. My family, my mother is on the call. I do have to recognize her. And my dad also made a short appearance. But I'm and my husband, I'm very grateful to everyone on my team. And I am grateful for the folks that I'm being alongside. So please support all of us. Susan Hayes is a queen. I adore her. Janet Dudding's a badass. And, Mike, Luke, Clayberg, Bethel, all of us can use your help and use your support. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us here tonight and telling us a little bit about your positions and letting us get to know you a little bit better. And we wish you the best on the campaign trail. And everyone, please donate to Rochelle and get out to vote. And let's make this happen, because we're so close. We can do this.